In this video, I'm going to show you how to go from this image to this using Photoshop. Every architecture student must know how to present their site data and analysis. Learning the basics like this will help you in many other ways during your architecture school. I always liked these type of diagrams. I was very much drawn towards this one in particular, so I wanted to try and recreate it. Let's jump straight into the video. I am using a drone shot by Griffin Woolrich, but you can use any photo of your site to follow along. If you notice in the reference images, we had some pop colors which were used for marking or labeling, while the whole base image is in almost black and white. You can select a color palette with how much ever number of colors depending on the details that you want to show in your diagram. If you have any doubt like will this color go well with this one, or if you need any assistance to select a color palette, you can go to colors.co. In this website you get a ton of options to select from. You can even change the number of colors in a palette, and you can just copy the color by clicking over it. Open the base image in Photoshop. After selecting the colors, you can bring them into Photoshop by clicking over the color to copy and go to Edit Fill Color and paste the color code in the dialog box and hit OK. I wanted to have them inside Photoshop itself for convenience, so I made squares using the rectangle marquee tool and pasted them. Now that we have brought in all the colors, let's move to the base image. Apply a black and white filter over the layer. I wanted to highlight the main roads that we can see in this image. So using the pen tool, I drew line along the shape of the road. You can select the line type according to your preference. I wanted these roads to portray the main axis or path in this diagram. So I am going with a solid and broad line. The next thing I wanted to add was the main design element, which in this case is the dock expansion. Since this wasn't a proper project or anything, I went with the flow and added things. I added an ellipse to demarcate the area where the new dock will be constructed. I kept the stroke of the ellipse in one layer and duplicated the ellipse, and this layer has only fill because I wanted to play with the blending mode and the opacity of the layer without affecting the other layer. I once again copied the ellipse and filled it with black color. I brought it below the other ellipse layers and moved it vertically a few pixels down. This will give the hover effect for the ellipse as seen in our reference image. You can reduce its opacity to match with the levels of the base image. Let's make all these ellipses in one group. I also added text over it. Select a size so that it doesn't look too big or too small. Once this is done, we can move to showing the waterways. Using the curvature pen tool, I started to draw several dotted lines that can clearly show the circulation of boats and yachts. I felt like the image was blank and I didn't have any details to this site or image. So I thought of adding another dock which will be in phase 3. I copied the group and moved it here. But be careful, you need to adjust the perspective of the ellipse after moving. Now let's highlight some blocks in the site. Using the ellipse tool, draw an ellipse covering the area you want and fill it with the same yellow color and reduce its opacity a bit. But you can always play with the blending mode to blend them even more with the base image. You can repeat this process to highlight the important areas in your site diagram. I also added text later to it. I wanted to add small vectors along the path, so I brought a PNG of a car into Photoshop, cropped it, scaled it down and placed it above the broad line. Now let's add a solid color adjustment layer of the same yellow color and play with the blending mode, but make sure to clip it to the car PNG. I also wanted to bring in some other vectors like boat and even duplicate these cars. So I made a group and clipped the solid color adjustment layer to that group. Now you just have to drag and drop the boat vector into the group. Scale it down, duplicate it and place it wherever you want. And always organize your layers. Even if you are in a hurry, at least organize and color code them after a certain amount of work is done. The most favorite element for me in this diagram is this one. Using the lasso tool, I trace the shoreline and using the soft brush, select the yellow color and with an opacity of around 70%, start dabbing the brush across the edge. Keep in mind the color should be more solid at the base and it should gradually become lighter as it goes up. Feel free to adjust the brush sizes and retouch wherever and whenever you want. Until you feel confident with what you have done, you can go back and forth and correct them. You can always experiment with opacity and blend mode. Using the crop tool, I cropped this image to a better linear proportion. And I added the heading for the diagram. I always use 2 font types at max in a diagram. By doing this, I feel we can easily bring in the hierarchy in the info, at the same time not confuse the viewer. If you feel the text is not clearly visible, you can add a small amount of drop shadow just to separate the text visually from the background image. This is the final image. Hope you all found this video helpful. If you had stayed till this part of the video, subscribe and comment what topic should I cover next. See you all in the next video.